Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Potentials. This is Leja, and tonight I have on Brandon from Tinfoil Tales. And I've been watching his podcast on YouTube, and you're also on other platforms as well. Is that correct?
Yes, it's pretty much available anywhere you listen to podcast ads. So Apple, Spotify, any of those platforms.
Awesome, awesome. So, Brandon, what got you started doing this, and what made you interested in doing podcasting and about the kind of topics that you do?
I've always been fascinated with like monsters and aliens and stuff like that from an early age. So it's always been something that's kind of interested in me, but I wasn't really so much into believing a lot of it. And then I had a weird experience that kind of made me a little bit more open-minded because I still am for the most part. I say I'm open-minded, but I try and write things off, like explain it before I jump to paranormal or unexplainable. But
Right.
when you have experiences and then it starts to open your mind a little bit more towards how things could actually be more than what you actually think it is. So that's kind of where I started with. Like, we can dive into that here in a minute, but basically, for the show or whatever is what I do. I just kind of give everyone a chance to come on and share their experiences or whatever because I feel like at least with me, the reason I started it was because I couldn't feel like I could talk about whatever happened to me because when you talk about some of the things that are so weird, people are going to say you're crazy or you're a liar or
Right.
anything basically because it's hard to come to terms with a lot of the stuff that I talk about or with the guests talk about because a lot of it doesn't make any sense and it doesn't make sense to me and I don't necessarily say I believe every single person I talk to, but I believe that they believe what they're telling me.
Mm,
It's not important to me to believe it, but as long as they
yes.
feel better about talking about it, then I feel like I'm giving them a chance to actually talk about things, so it makes things a little bit better for them.
Yes. 100%, definitely. So, what did you experience that made you want to start talking about it? And do you feel comfortable talking about that?
I've talked about it on several different podcasts lately, and it doesn't bother me to talk about it, but it's getting to the point now where I'm just kind of getting tired of talking about it. But
I'm making you do it again.
I'll give you the Cliff Notes version instead of spending like a super long time
Right.
dealing with it. But basically, back in 2007, I was leaving work and a coworker was in front of me and he swerved off the road to miss something in the middle of the road. And as I get closer, it basically looks like a human, but I thought it was a person wrapped in a blanket in the middle of the road. As
Mm,
I got closer, I could see that the way it was moving, it wasn't a person normally. Like I thought maybe it was like 4:30 in the morning. I thought they were drunk because they
mm.
were moving in a very weird pattern. I don't know how to like, it
Kind of
wasn't
an
natural.
awkward way,
It was very
unnatural.
unnatural. Yeah, it
Okay.
looked almost glitchy. Like they would
Mm,
almost like their body would like twitch, like weird, glitchy, fast movement. It was strange.
okay.
And I
That's
had to swerve too because they weren't getting out of the middle of the road. And as it goes past my window, this thing, I don't see a head, I don't see arms. At first, I thought, like, again, it was somebody wrapped in a blanket, but I don't see clothing. I don't see any I don't see hair. I don't see anything. It's just a solid black torso and legs. And it's very big and thick. And it's a lot taller than my vehicle. My vehicle, I looked online, it should have been about 66 inches, so 5.5 feet. I never seen the top of this thing, and it was leaning forward.
wow.
So I'm guessing it had to have been at least 6.5 to 7 feet tall if it stood directly up. So even if it was a person, that's a very big person. I'm 6'3", and everyone thinks I'm huge, but this thing was a lot bigger than I was.
Wow.
And when it gets behind the vehicle, I take off. I just press the gas and go on. Well, the person that was in front of me was a coworker, and he'd pulled into this gravel parking lot. And I pulled up next to him because I'd seen he pulled in there because he swerved off the road to miss it. And as I get up to him, he rolls down his window, and I roll down my window, and he's like, "Did you see that?" And I said, "Yeah, what was it?" And he said, "It didn't have a head." I was like, I didn't see a head, I didn't see arms, anything. I was like, let's go back. And had to do some finagling to get him to follow me back. As we get back to the area, it's only about a quarter mile down the road, but as we get back to that spot, there's now a large black dog looking canine laying across the road. And that wasn't there when we just drove through because I would have seen that. And like, so this thing, for some reason, my brain didn't process it the way, but I was like, this has to be what was walking in the road, even though why would a dog be walking in the middle of the road like that on two legs?
Hmm.
But it's just laying there and it looks completely dead. Like there's no movement. It's not looking at us. It just looks dead. So I stop my vehicle and I start to get out and he rolls down the window. He's like, what are you doing? I was like, well, there's a dead dog up here. So I walk up to like see like clearly this again, I'm thinking this is what had to been in the road. And maybe it was like a herd animal or something. So I start to walk up to it and as I'm about 15 feet from it, it lifts its head up and it's like looks back and our headlights are shining directly at it. And its eyes are reflecting like you see eye shine or whatever, and it lets out this really low, rumbly, bassy growl.
Hmm.
And I'm like, uh-oh. And I just stop because he sounds mad and he's not dead. It looks like a normal, I say normal, but very big. Almost look like a wolf, like a very large black puffy fur, almost like a chow dog's fur. It
Hmm.
had like a long tail and everything else, like bushy fur and everything on it. And it's as it's growling at me, I'm just watching as it tries to stand up and does like a little bit of a stumble. But then it stands directly up and it stands up on two legs like a person. And me being a skeptic and everything, I'm like, this makes zero sense because why is this happening? You know, like this doesn't make any sense. How's this thing doing this? And
Hmm.
years later, I've looked, I was like, was this a person in a costume? Like, I don't like that's how you try to figure it out. But
Right.
there's no way it could have been a person because the growl, the eyes reflecting and everything. So if that was a costume, it's one of the best costumes I've ever seen. But this thing stands up and we're looking eye to eye. And as I said a little bit ago, I'm 6'3", so I'm pretty tall for most people.
Right.
And we're eye to eye. So this thing has to be at least my height, which is strange for even a dog to be that tall. And we just look at each other for a few seconds. And at this point, I hear my coworker yelling at me to get back to my vehicle. And I'm watching this thing, I'm staring at it. I didn't see, you know, how like your typical Hollywood werewolf movies or whatever, they have like the humanoid hands and fingers. This didn't have any of that stuff. Like it literally had dog paws. Everything about it looked like a normal animal. There was nothing
Hmm.
strange other than the fact that it stood up like a human and it looked like it was natural. Like its front legs weren't doing this. They hung to the
Hmm.
side like a person's would.
Wow.
That's why I've said I thought maybe it was a person in a costume because it had a very humanoid stance to it. But then it like just kind of crouches down in this weird hunkered position and it like goes off to the side of the road. Someone asked me if it goes like a crab. I was like, I mean, kind of looks strange. Like it was almost like in a very crouched, like when someone would hunker down, but like walked off in a hunkered position. Didn't look normal how it walked away. And I don't see where it goes. It goes into the dark. Now there's a big fence that goes around this whole area. I don't know how it went around the fence or over the fence. It was gone. And at this point, I go back to my vehicle and my coworker had gotten out and he's standing next to my door and I'm talking with him about what we just saw because clearly this is crazy. And as we're talking, I happen to glance down on the ground. I'm like, do you see this? And right beside my foot is a mouse, just a normal looking field mouse.
Hmm.
And it's on its hind legs and it's washing its face. Like its fur is all wet and it's using its front paws to clean itself. Like it's wiping its face, it's wiping its mouth and going over its ears. And I take my foot and I kind of push it. And it doesn't even care that I touched it or moved it. Like it's oblivious that I even touched it, which is strange to me. Like why would a wild animal, especially like a rodent, like a mouse, not even care that a human touched it? Why did it come up to a person in the first place and then let me push it and it doesn't even care? Now I've seen mice that have been poisoned and their brains are screwed up or whatever, and they don't know what they're doing. But out in the middle of the road. There's really nowhere around where this thing would have been at to been eating poison. You know what I mean? So just the
Yeah.
timing of it doesn't make any sense. Like we just seen this weird thing walking, then we just seen this dog, now we see this weird mouse. Like there's just so much weird stuff going on in like a
Right.
5 minute span that makes zero sense. So at this point, I tell him I'm done, I'm going home. I go home and go to bed. The next morning, I sketch this dog-looking wolf creature, and I go to one of those forums because this was back in 2007, so we didn't really have like
Oh,
social medias like you do nowadays.
right.
And people are, well, I didn't take a picture. I was like, I had like an old track phone. Like that's this was like 17 years ago. This wasn't like recent,
No,
and we didn't have like the I
you
don't
didn't
know
have
tech.
phone cameras back then either, right?
Yeah, we did, but my
But
phone was
not
yeah, my phone what didn't have like that. I had like one of those old Nokia track phones. Like it
right.
was the little blocks you could play Snake on or whatever. That was the phone I had.
Yeah.
And basically, when I drew this picture, I posted it on the internet in this forum and whatever, and someone said that I'd saw a Michigan dog man. And I'd never heard of
Mm.
what a dog man was or anything about it because I thought werewolf because what else would I be thinking, you know?
Hmm.
And I got all this information. I go back to work and I try and talk to my coworker about it. Well, one of the other people in there start laughing, poking fun
Of course.
because he's like, "Oh, you ran over a werewolf?" No, like didn't run
Yeah.
over anything. But that's just how people are.
Right.
Well, it makes my coworker angry with me,
Mm.
and he basically
Okay.
tells me to knock it off. It was just a dog. He doesn't want to talk about it. This is
Right.
normal and don't want anything to do with it. So for
Right.
15 years, I just didn't talk about it because in my mind, and I agreed with him. I was like, yeah, it had to have been a dog. It looked like a dog. I mean, what else could it have been? I don't really believe in dog man or any of that type of stuff. So like to me, it doesn't make any sense. So it's like it has to be explainable. So I explained it off as it was a dog that found this mouse and the mouse was all wet 'cause the dog was trying to eat it and someone must have hit it and broke its front legs and it was trying to walk on its back legs. That's why it looks so strange.
Mm.
And that is the plausible explanation, except for the first thing that we saw walking was so much bigger than what the dog was. The dog was normal, proportionate size for its body. It was still
Right.
big, but it wasn't as big and thick as what the first thing walking in the road was that I didn't see a head or arms with. So I come back to what was that? Like I can't explain it. So because I can't, I have to physically and mentally explain things to make sense, and I can't do that. So it always brings me back to, well, what was it? And that's kind of why I do what I do because I wanted to talk with other people that maybe had similar experiences because it makes me feel crazy. Like it really does because I can't explain it and it doesn't make any sense for someone that doesn't want to believe in this type of stuff. Like if someone told me the same thing that I had and I didn't experience it and I didn't do with the stuff that I do now, I'd be like, this person's off their rocker because it doesn't make any sense. Like it's just a whole bunch of craziness. But I was there, I saw it, so I can't explain it. So it's just like, am I crazy? Like I don't
No.
know.
No,
So
I don't think you're crazy at all. I feel like it's something that more people are starting to see and feel
mhm,
more comfortable about talking about. Um, it, I mean, especially now that we do have camera phones where we can capture things that we weren't able to capture back in those days. Some people have been able to actually capture things on camera to kind
mhm.
of even then you still have people that try to explain it away as something else or try to discount it or say it's not real or it's CGI or
Yeah,
whatever. But it doesn't make sense that that many people. And first of all, why would you want to put something out there? It's not like you're trying to get attention because that's not the kind of attention that anybody wants. Nobody wants to be ridiculed. So
right.
it's not, you're not doing it for attention. You're not doing it for any other purpose other than, I'm sure there's other people out there that are having the same experience or similar experiences. And it needs to be brought to the forefront because my feeling is that a lot of even more strange things are going to be happening in the future, and people are going to have to get used to it and they're going to have to start dealing with it because I feel like these kinds of things are going to become more and more normal, um, more and more obvious. And so I'm really glad that you're talking about it and you're putting it out there and that you're, bringing other people into it and allowing them to talk about it and feel like, you know, it's nothing to make fun of. It's not something that you should ridicule because it's real. And whether it's happened to you or not, to be able to have that open mind to be able to even just see that it's a possibility that it could
Hmm.
happen, even if it hasn't happened to you, doesn't mean it isn't possible. So I really, I really give you a lot of credit for that to be able to, put it out there like that.
Yeah,
So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
not a problem. I, weirdly enough, I'd done the show for over a year and I never even talked about it on my show because I didn't want to make the show about me like it was about
Mm,
everyone else. So I rarely mention it. Like I might mention something on my episodes. I'll be like, well, I'll talk about that off air. But I don't like to
right,
make the show about myself. When I have a guest on, I want it to be focused on them. I don't want my own weird happenings to be the focal point. That's never what I was want. I'm not looking for the attention. I barely speak during my interviews.
right,
I I have guests on. I just let them share their stuff. And like, you got any questions? I'll be like, I mean, I do, but I don't want to make the whole thing about me asking you questions. Like, I just want you to come on there and feel comfortable sharing what happened because I know a lot of people just, I heard of a lot of other podcasts, like a lot of podcasters, they like to be the focal point of their show. And that's great. That's what they do. That's never been what I wanted to be about. Like, I wanted to make sure everyone else gets the attention because that's not something that I could care less about.
same.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I feel that's cool, and that's why I wanted to have you on. I was watching some of your episodes, and you talk about a lot of different things, not just but everything is pretty much unusual topics,
Yeah.
things that are unique or different, and I like that too because I also find that interesting, and I think a lot of people do. So, like, what are some of the other things that you like to talk about?
The podcast originally, the idea I had with the name, like the whole tinfoil concept. Now, I've dealt with people giving me crap over the fact that it's called tinfoil because you're making fun of people. I mean, no,
Mm,
that's not what I'm doing.
right.
My idea was originally I wanted to have a podcast. It was me and my friend. We talked about a lot of the weird like conspiracies that go on. We talk about alien stuff. We talk about like a bunch of stuff that's like they don't want you to know about. Like, everyone, well, who's
Hmm.
they? Well, the infamous they.
Yeah.
And that was just stuff that we wanted to talk about. And it didn't really pan out the way I thought. So I thought of the name and then I just sat on it for a while. And then I said, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. And then, like, we talked on the very first episode about weather control. And then the next episode, I
Mm.
interviewed someone that had an experience where he claims a dog man. Ironically, I wasn't looking for a dog man thing, but like that was the first actual guest I had.
Huh.
Ran into his vehicle down in Georgia. And then from there, it went to like paranormal stuff. It went back to Bigfoot and cryptids and more UFOs and alien abductions. And then it's went into like secret space program stuff. And then like all sorts of it just exploded into a whole bunch of different topics. And I just try and keep it open for whoever wants to come on. Like, I don't have an agenda. I'm
Yep.
not here to prove or disprove anybody. Like, you come on, if you feed
Yes.
me a line of crap, I mean, that's cool. You fed me a line of crap for the last hour. Like, it's here's your cookie. I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
what the end game of it is, but
Yeah.
I just do it because I feel like for some reason I feel like I have to do it. And I don't know how to explain it, but at this point it's just gotten to where I'm just like, okay. So
Right. I feel like it doesn't it kind of take on a life of its own where you just kind of when you go with the flow like that, you things just sort of gravitate towards you and you don't have any real control of it actually because you're going with the flow. So things that are meant for you just sort of come to you and in the timing that it's supposed to happen. I mean, that's what I kind of find happens with my podcast.
yeah, for me, and if anyone actually knows me personally and like talks to me or whatever, I am not one for internet clout or glory or anything like that.
Right.
So I just think it's weird because I've been able to get a lot of I'm always booked out. Like
Hmm.
I have enough episodes recorded. I was 20 episodes recorded and I released 2 episodes a week. So I had over 10 weeks worth of material recorded. I'm on break right now. I'm taking the entire month of July off from doing interviews because I've been doing interviews consistently for almost 2 years.
Wow.
And I got so far ahead that I wanted to take a break. Well, there's other podcasters that I talk with that are always asking me, like, how do you keep getting guests? How do you keep finding these people? And like, they reach out to me. Like, I'm not doing anything any different than anybody else, I don't feel like, but people reach out to me. And I don't know if it's because I have such a broad range of topics that it doesn't just, some podcasts are specifically named a certain topic. So they think that's all they can talk about. Like, if you're on a paranormal like so they think they can only talk about ghost stuff. If you're on a cryptid thing, they think they only talk about like a Bigfoot or something. That's for me, I'm the whole umbrella is anything strange.
Yes.
So it opens up the pathway for people to come on and talk about anything. But then I start to get people that want to talk about some weird things, and most people want to write it off as they're just, I'm letting people come on there or taking advantage of people with mental illnesses or disabilities. I'm like, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist or anything like that. So I don't know the definitions for people, but when someone reaches out and say they experience something and they come on there and they start talking about all the stuff they've experienced, yes, it does sound like they maybe have had, but I wasn't there.
Right.
So I don't feel like I'm taking advantage of anybody because I'm just giving them a chance to speak. Like I'm,
Right. And I think most of the people, they sound coherent. It's not like they're going off on a rant or
yeah,
they're not saying things that are totally unreasonable. Like they can actually, what they're saying makes sense, even if it doesn't make sense, if you know what I mean.
yeah.
Like,
The worst,
you know,
the worst
sorry.
ones that I seem to get the worst like feedback on are the ones who talk about secret space program. And that is one of the things that I struggle to 100% say I believe because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't see how someone can take your body, like your conscience out of your body, put you into space and then bring you back 20 years later and you're back in the same time you left and like you left. It,
Th-
scientifically it makes no sense to me. I'm not saying it's not true, but it's like I don't see how it's possible because if you can control time, then why do they need to do this? Because they can control anything, and once you control time, you can go into the future, you can go into the past. Like, why do they got to?
Yeah, there's a lot of quantum physics involved with that.
Hmm.
And I probably wouldn't have believed it until about a year ago when I started getting interested in quantum physics and studying it. And now it makes sense a little bit more to me. It's hard to explain to another person.
Yeah,
And it does sound crazy when you do, or else you end up using a terminology that is, you end up spending most of the time explaining the terminology instead of the concept.
yeah,
So then people get lost. So, but but if you're really avidly interested in it, it the truth finds you. And
hmm,
so I believe that it is absolutely possible that these experiences happened to these people. And I've had a few people that have experienced it
hmm,
on my podcast, and I absolutely believe them. Um, it's um, it's really hard once you get into like other realms and you get into other, things that are not something that we normally experience in this lifetime, like in this dimension, in this density, in this lifetime. We're not programmed that way, to
hmm,
get it. So it can be a struggle, and I'm not saying I have a total handle on it either, but um, the more that I started studying about it, the more it started to make sense.
yeah,
So, but people who talk about these things, they absolutely are open to all kinds of attacks,
yep,
from all different directions. And I mean, it's also kind of like when you start talking about the Illuminati, which I'm not going to get into that either. But when you start talking about that too, people either think you're crazy or they believe you. It's one or the
Yep.
other. It's like it's one of those topics that people fight over, and
Yeah.
it causes dissension. So, like politics or religion or anything else like that. So,
My whole
um,
belief system is all of that is put in place to keep people against each other. That is the
yes,
whole thing. They don't want us to be
to pit
completely,
people against each other. Yep,
yeah, they don't want
and
us
cause
unified.
division.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, and you see that because when people start to become unified, they try another tactic. They
Hmm.
throw something else at us to try to divide us. I mean, I think COVID was a big example of that, and that was a pretty obvious tactic to try to separate everyone. I mean, they literally tried to keep everybody 6 feet apart from each other,
Yeah.
and and further. So,
I
uh,
will give you a little advice here. You might not want to say that C word too much. I've been banned on the YouTube
oh
a couple times because of
yeah,
that
yeah.
word.
I feel like I've got such a small audience that I'm not on the radar of YouTube yet for them to. I also have a Rumble channel, and I feel like you can say that on Rumble.
You can.
So,
I just made
yeah.
Rumble, but I was just banned on YouTube like 2 weeks ago. So
Oh,
I
okay.
just,
Well, maybe I'll get banned for the first time with this
yeah,
podcast.
I got a week's ban from it. I'd already had a warning, and then I got a week's ban, but it all stems from that C word.
Oh, the
So
C word, you can't say it.
yeah, for some
Well,
reason, that's
maybe
it.
I'll edit it out. I can, but
Yeah,
it
I've
just
always
seems so silly.
once that happened the first time, we try to limit it, and I thought now that I actually removed them all when the guys that mentioned it, but apparently I let one slip and got slapped with a
Oh,
got slapped with a ban. So
okay. Well,
yeah,
good to know. I don't think I've ever discussed it before on my podcast. I've never even brought it up.
yeah.
Um, but it's something that it's such a big thing and everybody knows what it is. It just seems so silly that I see this all the time on YouTube where people have to use other words to express it, but we all know what it means,
Yep.
And all of the terminology, it has to do with that whole experience. Everybody has to use these fake words, and it's just so silly.
If
Like,
you
can't
had,
can't we just
I would say, if we have to go around things and use fake words, uh, there must be some sort of truth behind why they want to hide the information so bad and want to slap bans on you. And it's not because you're spreading misinformation. Like
right,
it's literally information that has been deemed they don't want to be known. Like
right.
I can have people come on the show and they can talk about how they got into a spaceship with Bigfoot and they flew off and picked up a couple beers and what, like some crazy stuff, and YouTube doesn't care. Like that's fine,
Yeah.
but the moment you start talking about like some controversial stuff, like you mentioned the Illuminati,
Hmm.
one of those videos I got, I didn't get a warning on it, but they won't monetize that video because controversial topics.
Right.
And then this dreaded C word stuff, they won't even air it. They completely remove the videos. So anytime that stuff gets brought up or people talk about things that go against what they don't want you to know. And again,
Right.
everyone says they. I think if you watch it, listen to a show like mine or whatever, you kind of get an idea who I'm referring to when I say they. But
Right.
it's
Well,
the
I
people.
think my audience knows who they are too.
Yeah, it's
So, yeah,
it's not you or I, but it's the people that are the puppet masters. Is how I've always referred to it as the people that are behind the scenes pulling the strings.
I know, but it's just that like they're beating them. They're like they're shooting themselves in the foot, really, because all it
Hmm.
is just bringing more attention to it. The more like when I see that somebody's gotten banned for something, it makes me want to watch it even more. It's just like
Right.
all the books that are banned from the library, you want to go out and buy them on Amazon so that you can read what you're not supposed to be reading. It just makes people want to watch it even more. So I think they're doing us favors, really, you know.
I don't
Um,
understand why they're wanting to remove books, why they're wanting to change history things, like they're wanting to remove things that happen, like they don't want to talk about certain things.
mm.
I get that there's certain words in books that they don't want children to learn. Okay, they're going to learn it anyways. Like if you look into modernized music, I think there's a lot of occult symbolism and a lot of things hidden within music. And I think there's a lot, again, goes back to that whole Illuminati thing. There's a lot of different types of stuff that's implemented in pop culture.
Yeah,
But what do they want to
absolutely.
remove from history? Like
Yeah.
when you remove history, or I feel like that's a lot of things that have happened. Name someone that's been alive from the 1800s. There's not anyone at this point, I wouldn't think.
Nope.
The further we get from those time periods, the more they remove things and change things so the new generations of children don't learn some of the stuff that happened and everything's been changed. And I've always said this, like the history books are wrote by the people that won the wars or the battles because they are the ones that makes the stories.
Right.
So who's to say what really happened 500 years ago? Who's to say what happened 2,000 years ago? Who's well, religions and everything? Like everything's been
Yeah.
wrote by man, and whoever man is, whichever man it wants to be, they are deceiving people because I think everything is a means for control. And
Right.
that's where we're at now is like they're doing the same thing. There's certain words you can't say because you're going to get banned. What is that? That's a control.
Yeah.
So,
They're trying to control the narrative,
yeah.
basically, and they've been controlling it for a very, very long time. And so, I mean, my mind has been blown within the past 5 years. I think I started like about 10 years really questioning everything and then going down rabbit holes and finding stuff out. But 5 years ago during COVID is when I really started, or I said the word again, is when I started really like doing my research because I had time. Everybody had time
Yeah.
back then, right? So I really started buying books on Amazon and finding all this interesting stuff out, and doing my own research. And then I guess, when another thing that really blew my mind, we could talk, I guess we could say the word Tartaria, can't we?
Yeah.
um,
That
when I, that kind of blew my mind, and all of the, old world architecture and this stuff that got blown away, and actually really literally obviously destroyed, not by fire, because
mhm.
there's no way that brick and stone buildings can be destroyed by fire. Like they were literally demolished. And you can see that in the pictures. And it's like, how did we not notice that before? Like, why did it take this long for us to figure this out?
Yeah. I've actually wanted to do an episode on that. I've never found anyone that really wants to talk about it that knows a lot more about it to dive into it. So I've never done an episode, but that's definitely something I'd like to cover at one point.
There's a few really good channels out there that I like to watch about that, and I'll give them plugs because they're really good. And one is called Marvelous Old World. His name is Matt, and I can't remember his last name, but he's absolutely amazing. And he knows all about that stuff because he was an architect student,
Mm.
and he does build. He builds, so he understands how it's impossible for all of those things to have happened and the way they built the buildings that they say they built. There's no way that that could have, been accomplished during that period of time that they say they were building them. So he goes into a lot of detail. And there's another guy, forget the name of that one. But they're two Matts, and they both talk to each other. They both collaborate with each other and are on each other's channels. So if you find Marvelous Old World, you'll find the other Matt too. And I recommend maybe reaching out to them if you want to do a show
Okay.
on Tartaria and about the old world because they're really good. And there's another channel called My Lunch Break, and he talks about that a lot too. Um, and
I think I've heard
I
of that
just,
guy.
yeah, he's really good. I like to see people that come out of obscurity. Like their whole life changed because they started, looking into things and researching things, and then their minds get blown and they're like, well, I can't just sit on this information. I got to share this with people. This is amazing.
Hmm.
And I just love to see that happen because um, so many people are beginning to become aware of what's really going on and how we've been kind of programmed and you know, kind of brainwashed into believing certain, histories and realities that really aren't real. And it makes you question the one that we're in right now and what direction it's going in. And so I'm kind of trying to hope to make it go in a positive direction where we can change things and offer some solutions and make it a better place a better world.
Yeah. I just, that's kind of how I am too. Like for me, I'm just here to try and, I don't want to sound corny or whatever, but like I'm here to try and help other people. Like
Yeah,
I
that's not
don't,
corny
I,
at
I
all.
don't do a whole lot. Like I'm giving someone a chance to talk, but what happens if someone listening has had an experience and they hear someone else that had it similar? So they're like, oh, now I feel better because I don't feel like I'm the only one. Like that's what I struggled with is not being able to talk about what happened with me because to me, who was going to believe me? Because it doesn't make any sense. I've told a few people, and usually when I talk to people, I always think that, well, now they think I'm a lunatic.
Mm,
And I wanted to give a place for people to not have to feel that way. So I feel like
yeah,
if a guest comes on and shares and they feel better about it, and if a listener hears it and they feel better about it, like to me, I feel like I'm trying to help people. It's the only way I feel like I can reach out and do that.
yeah. And that's great. I really applaud you for doing that. There's so many different things that people have seen, and it can be anything, it can be anything from like a creature or even a spiritual being that they've seen that, maybe isn't physical, that it's hard to explain what that was, because you can't even capture it on film because it's not, you can't capture well, you can, some cameras can, but it's hard to capture a spirit on film. Sometimes they come across as an orb or something like that,
Yeah.
but maybe the way you see it is totally different and you're trying to explain it to somebody and they think you're crazy. And so the more people that come forward and talk about it, the more, normalized it becomes. And then, someday it'll just be like, oh yeah, that's normal. Yeah, I've seen that too. And I feel like that UFOs are another subject that, like, okay, so the government kind of finally admitted that they exist, but how many of them are reverse engineered our our craft,
Hmm.
or how much of them are actually not our craft? And are we able to discern the difference between, what they are? And a lot of that comes down to, being able to trust your own intuition and your own discernment.
I noticed that one thing that they started to toss around is interdimensional.
Yeah.
Like
Stephen
back
Greer uses that.
back in during their meetings, and I think it was in January. I forget what the lady's name was, but she's one of the representatives that's pushing for it. She straight up said interdimensional, and that's been a huge thing in podcasting lately. Which podcasts that goes through tropes I've noticed since I've been doing it. Like a lot of people got on the whole kick of like if you're in the same kind of genre that I am, I guess you'd consider it a genre, but there was a whole kick on Dogman, and now it went into Nephilim, and then like interdimensionals and portals. Like
Yeah.
when you name drop stuff like that, like I said, everyone's doing it for the clicks and the glory because that's what's popular and trending right now, I guess. So that's what everyone want to jump on that bandwagon. So when the government actually mentioned interdimensional, I was like, oh, literally, that's kind of where I've started leaning. And now it's funny that the government's bringing that term up too, because it just seems like of all the time to bring it up, why now? Like when that term's been getting tossed around so much lately in the podcast realm, now they threw it out there. So I was like, are they trying to say this is a possibility, or are they just trying to throw people off?
Right. Like, are they trying to make it part of their narrative,
Yeah.
that they're going to try to push?
Hmm.
And therefore kind of hijacking the term and making it mean what they want it to mean instead of what it was originally intended to mean. And so it's then, um, it's very tricky because people get tripped up on terms and then they latch onto them and they think that that's That's the only meaning that it can have
Right.
when there's so many other descriptions of the same thing. It doesn't have to be that term, you know.
They they kind of already took control, like UFOs, flying saucers. Like back in the
Hmm.
40s, the whole flying saucer craze came from. And I'm Kenneth Arnold, I think was his name, the guy that reported he saw the flying craft before the whole Roswell thing. And it was like a month before, or maybe just 2 or 3 weeks before, but he'd reported he'd seen these flying craft. And the picture that he drew, it looks like the crescent moon shape, like it's almost like the Batman batarang symbol or whatever. Like it did not look like a typical flying saucer. He said that it flew like a saucer skipping across the water. Flying
Mm.
saucer was then started pushed through the media, and everyone was seeing these UFOs, these discs, these craft, these circular flying saucers.
Hmm.
But that's not what he originally said happened. And then 2 weeks later, they have a crash, quote unquote, flying saucer at Roswell.
Right.
But was it really a flying saucer? They released information, and then within the next day or two, they retracted everything, said it was just a balloon.
Hmm. Right.
But flying saucer was already being pushed a week or two prior through the media and all the newspapers and stuff because of what Kenneth Arnold had said happened and he'd seen when he was flying his airplane. So
Right.
they took that term and they were just forcing it. And that's how they controlled the narrative because that's everyone all of a sudden we're going to say, oh, we're seeing these UFOs, these flying, so like what's behind my head right now from the X Files. I want to believe like that classic UFO
Yeah.
image. When someone
Right.
says UFO, you think of flying saucers. And
Right.
that's not what the original thing even looked like.
Right.
So they controlled it, and that's the image that now everyone thinks of when you say UFO, you think of that.
Exactly. And it's just like how we have so many different styles of vehicles out there, and
Hmm.
not no one vehicle looks the same. And it's like that with spacecraft. I mean, there's little tiny scout, craft, and then there's the big motherships, and then there's all different types of sizes and styles of a- and people just want to think that there's just the flying saucer, and if it doesn't look like that, then it can't be real.
Hmm.
So it's if when you start doing research into it, into UFOs and what what they all look like and where they could be from, and um, what their capabilities are, it's kind of mind-boggling, but it's actually mind-opening too, because
Yeah.
it makes you realize that you've only begun to scratch the surface of what is out there, and what other beings are capable of, and even ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, I've done a couple of shows. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Wingmakers.
No.
Okay, well, that is a story about um, our future selves uh, that came back in time, and they built inside of a cave in near Chaco Canyon. Um, they built 23 chambers that showed um, what the culture had become, what we had become in the future. And they were reaching out to us to show when we were ready to find it, which we did. We found it in the 90s. We originally found it in the 70s. We didn't understand it and put it back. And then in the 90s, we dug it up again and found the cave again, and then went in, and somebody from a certain group of people that was like intelligence, they went in and investigated and were able to figure it out. And so that there's a whole story on it called The Wingmakers, and it's actually online. You can find it online, but other than that, you really don't hear about it too much. But it's a very interesting story because it's a story about our future selves coming back in time to contact ourselves and show us what we become and what we turn into, and actually reach out in an artistic way. There's art, there's music, and there's poetry in these caves. And they were using it to try to communicate to us. now. And it's really fascinating.
It's funny, not in a sense funny, but like, what did we supposedly do when I think it was back in the 70s when they sent off one of the satellites or the whatever is a Discovery or whatever that's like left orbit of our solar system now. They have a
Right.
gold plate and it's got writings on it. And I think it's got like doesn't have like music or something on it too, like symbols and everything. It's
Yep.
almost the same concept of what we did, sending it out into space to finding this now in caves. It's
Right.
it's
Right.
I said it's basically the same concept.
It is. It's very similar. And some of it was apparently telepathic as well. So they had sent somebody in there who was able to use telepathy to pick up, to communicate with them in some way. And that person kind of disappeared, and we don't know whatever happened to him. But he was able to decipher some of the things because they wrote in another language, and we couldn't understand what it said, and he was able to decipher it by using telepathy with he communicated with the beings that had originally written it. So
That
that's how he
is
found out it was our future selves.
that sounds like not to sound offensive to anyone with religions or anything like that, but to me, and everyone throws this out here too. Like anytime you hear about telepathy or anything like that, a lot of people want to toss out the whole demon thing. You're talking to demons or stuff like
Right.
that. And
Yeah.
I'm not a religious person in the sense of that, so I don't really think everything's a demon. I know a lot of people think aliens are demons.
Yeah.
Someone left a comment because this little you have little guy behind me, a little green alien, uh, basically said that I'm bringing all the bad stuff in the house because I'm idolizing demons because that's what that thing back there is. I'm like, well, it's a little noise making green alien. Like it's, but someone said that in a comment on a YouTube video that by having that in the background and all the things that are on my wall or whatever, I'm giving all these things what they want. I'm bringing in all these evil spirits and demonics and all this stuff by worshiping them or by giving them idols and everything. I was like, okay, that's the struggle that I deal with when it comes to
Mm.
some of the stuff because again, I have to try and judge if people that are talking to me are being honest if there's something wrong, and then I got to deal with the people that listen to it that want to.
Right. I
So,
just sort of don't worry about
yeah.
what people think that are listening because the ones who really are drawn to it are curious and open-minded and want it, and they're drawn to it for a reason. And the people that don't understand it or are afraid of it, they're just not ready yet. And I'm not going to judge them one way or another. They're not ready. They're they may be afraid of it for a reason, and it's their programming, and it's not necessarily their fault that they're programmed that way, you know. And
Mhm.
I just feel like a lot of the people that are programmed that way are going to be whenever everything comes out, you know, whenever it becomes very obvious that that a lot of this stuff is real and it's not demons and it's not, you know, what they think it is or what they were programmed to think it is. It's going to be an ontological shock for them, and it's going to be really hard for them to accept. So I have a lot of compassion for them because when that does happen, they're going to need some people around that are going to be able to like say, "Hey, it's okay. You know, you're going to be all right." You
Mhm.
know, it was shocking for me too at first, but you have to at some point sort of either come to terms with it or embrace it or something because it's real. It's real stuff. It's I'm convinced that it's real. Um, and if somebody wants to think that I'm, you know, delusional or whatever for thinking that, I really don't care
Yeah.
at this
That's
point.
that's how I've gotten to is like people want to say what they say half the time. I don't even acknowledge comments anymore because
Yeah,
once you do and once you respond, some of the things that they say might irritate me, but you're just opening up that door for more.
right.
So it's
Yeah,
not even worth it. I
Right.
try and avoid all the traps and the dramas and everything else that goes on when you're doing a podcast because
Yep.
I realized very quickly there's a lot of cliques and a lot of gatekeeping and a lot of people in groups that want to argue about, well, this is the only way because they know everything. And I've always said, and it might piss some people off, but there are no experts in this field. Like, there is no one that is an expert on the paranormal or the supernatural. There's no one that is an expert in UFOs or aliens or cryptids or anything like that because we lack any physical evidence and proof other than what we've studied. But there's been no mainstream attention to any of this stuff because for some reason they don't want that to be out there. And you don't have anything conclusive to say these things are even real. So a lot of it is based off of what people experience. So when you have an experience, you're going by what people say, and then you have people arguing that, well, this hasn't happened. This could, I know it has to be this way. This person can't be telling the truth. Well, you weren't there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So you're basing it off your own opinions. I'm not saying people aren't very researched and have knowledge about it, but you're not an expert. Because once you start throwing the term around that you're an expert, I automatically just like this guy's full of himself. Just
Right.
because you cannot sit there and say you're an expert in anything that has no backing to it.
Right.
Like that's just me. And when I say that, I know it makes people angry with me because they're so-called experts, but whatever.
Mm. Right. I mean, I think you can only say you could say you're an experiencer. You can say I've experienced this and it has been my experience that this happened. But people who are like so against that, like you can't possibly have experienced that. Well, just because you didn't doesn't mean that it hasn't happened for that person. And,
Right.
like, do we really know what truth is? Do we really know what's going on? Because we're seeing it on a screen in front of us. Like, when they show us the news, how do we know that that's real?
Hmm.
How do we know that anything that we see on a screen is real?
I get the same way with people that are super religious. Like, and I'm not
Mm,
trying to say religion is wrong or anyone's wrong in what they believe. If you have a belief, that's great. But when you try to force it on everyone else,
hmm
because this is what you believe does not mean what you believe is accurate. I'm glad you believe in it, but just because you believe it doesn't mean that I need to. Like, and then I get a lot of people, it seems to be the more Christianity, I think, just because we're from America, that's the more predominant religion through here. But
right.
I always get people saying religious stuff, and it doesn't bother me. I grew up in a Christian household. My parents and my grandparents, like my whole family were like in a Pentecostal church. So that's what I was raised in. I just don't
Mm,
follow that.
right.
And I'm not saying it's wrong, but I have my own belief systems. And people claim that when you do this type of stuff, you're bringing in these evil spirits or you're dabbling in the occult. I recently had someone tell me that a lot of the weird things that have happened in my house and in my life and everything else is because an occult dabbler and I don't know what I'm doing. And I was like, you know nothing about me. Like, I don't dabble with anything.
They
But
don't even know what occult means. Like if
yeah.
you look up the meaning of what the word occult means, it means secret.
Hmm.
So you're dealing in secrets. You're dabbling with secrets.
Right.
How dare you?
Right. But because,
Things that have been kept hidden. And yeah, these things have been kept hidden for a reason, but not necessarily a good reason. It's for a
mhm,
nefarious reason because they don't want the average person to know. And maybe the average person couldn't handle it, but that's only because of the way they've been programmed. And I don't feel like humans have always been this dumb, to be honest. I think there
no.
was a time when we were probably a lot smarter and we could have handled it, but
If you look
um, a,
through history and you
a
look at the
lot was taken
pyramids
away.
and how everything was supposedly built, they can't build them in modern times, but we're
Right.
talking about people that had no technology were able to build some of these megaliths and the pyramids and all these crazy architectural things throughout the world. And
Mm.
they can do that, but now modernized technology can't build it.
Yeah.
That
Well, you
doesn't make
look
any.
at the kind of buildings that we build now compared to what has existed for eons, really.
Hmm.
There's some buildings that are thousands and thousands of years old on the earth, and they don't need our help. They're doing just fine, despite us bombing them and trying to destroy a lot of these buildings. Uh, the buildings that we build now wouldn't withstand like a really bad storm, you know,
Hmm.
like they're just not even close to being the same caliber of what we were able to build at a time when we were supposedly only using horses and buggies. So it makes no sense. And a lot of the narrative is just ridiculous. But I mean, you go back to Tesla and frequencies and sound, and when you start studying things like that, you start to understand maybe how the pyramids were really built, and it had nothing to do with, using pulleys and logs and stones, um, and what they say they did met lots of slaves, it's just ridiculous to think that that's how the pyramids were built, like what we were told.
Yeah.
Um, so when you start studying what, you know, things like sound and levitation and how sound can levitate stones, how certain frequencies can levitate stones. And you see buildings like the Coral Castle in Florida and how he was able to create that castle by using levitation. And it wasn't even that long ago. Um,
Hmm.
it was in the 20th century. So, I mean, we still have some of that technology around, and we're sort of slowly regaining it. And it's hopefully we're going to be able to have it within the next 20 years. I'm really hoping that we'll be able to get that out there along with free energy and things like that. Am I allowed to say free energy on YouTube? I don't
I
know.
don't know. That might get you a star warning or something. I don't know what to say on there. It's I know, and people laugh when I say this, but I'm pretty sure that I'm kind of quote unquote shadow banned just because my show, certain episodes, no one ever watches them.
Mm.
And you can literally search for the name of the episode. They don't show up unless you put in Tinfoil Tales. They will not show up. I just made a Rumble when they banned me, and I had more views. I had no followers on Rumble. I only had like a couple people started to follow me on Rumble right away.
They banned you on Rumble?
No, when I was banned on YouTube, but when I put the videos on Rumble,
Oh,
I had more people and more views on Rumble than I'd ever get on
yep,
YouTube, and I have like
yep,
a bunch of YouTube subscribers, like 1,100 and something YouTube subscribers, but my latest video gets like 30 people, like 30 views.
yep,
But on
yep,
Rumble, if I put on Rumble, I've got like 300 views. I'm like, can I have like 5 subscribers? So explain
yeah,
that.
yeah. I
So,
totally, I totally believe that. Yeah, I know they don't like it, and they totally unsubscribe people too. Um,
hmm.
I have, I have several podcaster friends that they've done that too, and it's just, it's ridiculous. But thank God for Rumble. Thank God for other platforms that we can put things on.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're on TikTok. Um,
I made one.
the
I don't use it. I hate social media to be honest.
Yeah. Well, the only thing that I like about TikTok is, well, not the only thing, but one of the things I like is that it runs on algorithms completely. So whatever you type in that you want to see, like you search it, you'll get more of. Once you start watching that, you'll get more of that. So I got a lot of really strange things on TikTok that I get to watch, and there's so much on there. There's so much on there. They don't seem to ban a lot of things on TikTok, so you can find some really controversial stuff, and also you can download them. You can't always do that. You can somewhat on Instagram, but there's a lot of things you can't download on Instagram, but you can on TikTok. So that way, if somebody puts something out there that's really controversial, then you can save it to your phone or your device. And when they take it down off TikTok, you can repost it and there's nothing they can do about it.
Yeah.
So I love that. And you can post it on other platforms as well. So, I mean, social media, you can use it for your advantage, and I feel like it has actually brought a lot of things to light. Um, I don't watch TV anymore. I haven't watched mainstream TV since 2012. So I get a lot of my information from YouTube and social media and Rumble and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So,
I don't pay attention to mainstream news or anything anymore because
yeah,
it's funny that you keep mentioning TikTok because I don't want to I won't go into it on air, but basically we're not allowed to have that on any type of our electronic devices for where I work.
interesting.
And it's not necessarily because of my company, but it's because of a mandate that's happening for things that we do business with,
Oh, okay.
mainly the federal government. So
Right.
they don't want anyone having TikTok because they claim it is used for spying on people. I was like, well, the people that spy on you are mad about people spying on you. That's weird.
I know, I find that so ironic because it's like they're spying on us all the time with every kind of social media that's already out there. So why are they picking on TikTok? And the reason I feel like they are is because they know how effective it is in the truther community and how effective it is because you can download everything on it and keep it on your devices. You can't do that with Facebook and with a lot of other social media. So I feel like they're threatened by it, and that's why they're trying to take it down. Um,
Basically, if you're a contractor that works for government agencies, you have to abide by these new stipulations. And
Interesting.
I don't know how it's taken effect elsewhere. I just know for us personally, like we're just adopting this new policy based off of what is being forced by some of the clients, and some of the clients that we deal with are apparently contracted with federal people. So like it all just goes downhill. So it's just easier for us to say that we don't use that. Now it doesn't matter to me because I don't use my work stuff for anything that I do anyways.
Mm,
So, but as far as TikTok, I have it on my personal phone, but I don't use it. Like I've never really
mm,
messed with it because it's just not anything I've been looked into. Because like I said, I'm not a big social media person. I have Instagram, I have Facebook, and apparently I have X too. It's attached to my
yeah,
website. So anytime I upload an episode, there's a random X post from. Apparently it's me, but it's not me. It's my automatic posting that comes from my
yeah,
website.
yeah. I I have that too. So yeah, I mean that's the thing with it. It's because it they I don't think they shadow ban people. They have taken things down. Um, there have been some people on that platform that have had their stuff removed completely because they were talking about something so controversial that it was more like not controversial in terms of fringe topics, but like there was one person who she was talking about certain celebrities,
Yeah.
and then not only was her TikTok taken down completely, and then she was able to get a whole new one, and then she had to be use different words to talk about the celebrities, like change their names a little bit. But eventually, she literally died, and she was very young. It was
Mm.
very suspect, and most of her followers believe that she was killed. So I'm not going to say her name, but I found it very interesting that those kinds of things happen, and that's how it's it's just so wild that this is happening. You know, that people actually get killed for speaking about certain people in the industry, and that's pretty, I mean, I'm just hoping that I would like to see like all of the hero worship and the celebrity worship go away because I don't feel like people should be worshipped. I don't believe anything should be worshipped, to be honest. I feel like we should just um like stop worshiping things.
Yeah. There's there were some things that happened, and I don't really want to keep throwing out certain words to get your video in trouble or anything, but when a certain person was arrested back in 2019 and it was trending that this person didn't kill himself before he actually supposedly killed himself, that was trending on Twitter before it ever happened. And then mysteriously he offed himself somehow in prison. Conveniently, the guard went to sleep and the camera stopped working because that's awful great timing.
Yeah.
But the same thing happens to people that talk about a certain former president from the 90s. When you mention that family or whatever, all these people that had information on them mysteriously takes two bullets to the back of the head themselves.
Right.
Boondock Saint style. I was like, how's that possible? Like,
Right.
but when people start talking about things, they mysteriously end up dying, and it's always they did it themselves, which is makes zero sense because if anyone looked at how they happened, like that, they didn't do that.
Right.
But so it's become a running joke. Like everyone knew that he was going to be killed in jail, and it was literally trending on Twitter before it happened. Like, and again, everyone knows he didn't do it.
Yeah.
He deserved it, yeah. But like, did is that what really happened? Is he really gone? Like, who really knows at this point? But it's just everyone knows at this point that it's kind of a running joke. And what are we supposed to do about it? That's where they slap you in the face with it, like, we can do this, and there's nothing you guys can do about it. You can
That's
make your
what it,
jokes.
yep. That's what it is. It's like another, like a way of trying to control everyone to say, well, like listen, you're helpless. There's nothing that you can do to change anything. This is just how we're in control, and you can't do anything because this is what we do. And this is the thing, though. That's not true. And we have a lot more power collectively than they do. And we can actually do something to change the world. We can, but we have to, I feel like we have to have enough of us to really make it a consensus reality in order for it to happen. I'm not sure how many of us there have to be, but I guess there just aren't enough of us yet because it's not happening yet.
No.
But
When
I
everyone when everyone wakes up and realizes that everything that we argue with and hate each other for and everything has been implemented in there to cause the division and hatred,
yeah,
and we're all the same, one way or the other. It is literally us against
yeah.
them, and we outnumber them by so many. But I don't know if it'll ever happen because we're so
I
programmed to do what we do.
Well, it's not, and it's not even just the programming. They keep throwing stuff at us like, okay, well, there was the whole Occupy movement where people did come together and tried to stop things. And then that went away because they knew it would just play out and they let it, and then they just, throw it back in everyone's face. But what they do is they just keep putting things out there, making, causing people to hate each other for stupid reasons, causing division between groups of people. And as long as they can continue to do that and cause wars and allow people or encourage people to keep fighting each other and fighting in their wars, that they play both sides. They
Yeah,
put money down on both sides. They win either way, no matter who wins the war. They still win. They don't care who wins. It's like them watching a cockfight or a dog fight.
yeah,
That's all we are to them. So they're just watching it and they're totally entertained by it. And it doesn't matter who wins to them. It's just entertainment.
yeah.
So if we start realizing that that's what's happening and don't participate, just refuse to be in the fight, then a lot of this will go away. And I just don't know how deep the programming runs, but it seems to run pretty deep for people to want to participate in wars and fighting.
I see a lot of posts lately, and I've been unfriending people on Facebook. It's just they want it. I think they're literally crazy at this rate, but because of what's coming up in November, everyone wants to have a specific winner in the race, and if they don't get this person, then they're going to revolt, and we need a civil war. And I was like, you guys are stupid. Like
Yeah,
anyone that wants that is clearly stupid.
right. Like, what is that going to accomplish?
Like you think things are bad now. Imagine going to war. You're complaining about how much it costs for a thing of milk. Well, you're not even going to be able to get milk if we're at war with each other. Like, are
Right.
you stupid? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know what they're being fed, but it seems like it's almost like are they watching something that's making them think that? I just really feel like people aren't thinking for themselves when they say these things. It's like it's not even coming from their own mind. You know, I
Yeah.
feel like it's being transmitted into their brain somehow, whether it's through whether they're still watching TV or media or whatever it is, but I don't feel like it's coming. They're not thinking. It
Mm.
it's not them. And um, I just would like to see all of that into all of the transmissions and them beaming thoughts into people's heads. I'd like to see that end too.
Yeah. I just, like I said, I just shake my head at this point. If I see people posting up some ridiculous stuff, I just unfriend because
Yeah, you
I
don't want
don't
to be connected to that.
know.
Yeah,
It's
uh,
bad enough, like try and decipher if people are even real these days, let
yeah,
alone seeing all that stuff. Because
yeah,
I've I made this new account back in March, and it's almost got 5,000 friends on. They just been people constantly adding me, adding me, adding me, adding me,
mm,
and I stopped accepting friend requests. It just got overbearing because I'm like, I was have to try and decipher if people were real or fake. Because if you click one real or one fake one, like I started getting messages, and then
yeah,
it's just, and I struggle responding to people's messages. It got so overbearing again. I was like, I keep getting videos sent to me from random people, like, and they're just off the wall stuff. I'm like, what does this have to do? Why are you sending me this?
yeah,
So
yeah. Same here.
it's it's out there. So social media,
Yeah,
like I said, I am not a big fan of it. It's the only reason I do it at this point is because I feel like it's the way to get out there and get in touch with people. And there is some people that do want to talk to me legitimately. And then there's, I don't know if they're robots or plants from to cause division or what, but
I
that's
think you can feel it. I mean, I think you can sense it. It's like just go with your gut feeling on that, you know, because you can tell. I mean, usually within the first a couple of interactions with the with
you know,
whatever it is, you can tell whether it's not real or you could
if
sense it.
if I
So
accept a friend request and I get a message within 10 seconds, I'm instantly unfriending the person because I know it's not a real person. I think it's automatically a bot.
yeah, and it's a like that user 73567. You're not a real person.
Yeah.
So yeah, uh, but yeah. So I mean, I think that there's a I'm hoping, like I said, I think there's a chance that things will get better. I'm looking forward to that, and putting these kinds of shows out there and this kind of information out there is really key to opening the door for people who are just searching for something that's real, you know, and trying to connect with that and feeling people who are feeling alone in whatever experience it is that they had. Um, you know, this is there's got to be some safe spaces for them where they can feel comfortable coming to and speaking, you know, whether they're going to go on camera or not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But just having that safe space to come to, and that's really important. So again, like I really appreciate that you're doing that, and I'm really glad that you came on my show and um, expressed your points of view and your experiences, and thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Hey, not a problem. Glad to be on here. Hope you lost my train of thought. I was gonna say I hope the show does well, and maybe I'll promote it on my show or on my Facebook whenever it releases or whatever, and get you some new people checking it out.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I
I
might
try
have to
and
put it on Rumble.
yeah, I try and always post something if I'm on someone else's show. A lot of people don't do that, but I'm not egotistical in the sense of there's only my show. Like
Oh
I
no,
mean,
I totally feel you on that one too, because I do that too. I have a lot of friends that are also podcasters, and we post each other's shows on each other's channels, and
yeah,
yeah, it's always good to promote each other, especially when you're doing something like this, because I feel like it's important. So
hmm
yeah, I do appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah, not a problem. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a great night.
Yep, you too.
Thank you.